In the heat of June 1780, some of the most violent and destructive urban riots in English history were sparked, comparable only to the riots of August 2011, which caused 2 deaths, injuries to 200 police officers and countless civilians, and over 200 million done in damages. In that hot June, large parts of central London were ablaze, prisons were destroyed, and the Bank of England was attacked. Many lost their lives as hundreds of rioters were shot dead by troops and the city burned. It seemed like England was on the verge of a revolution. This week is etched into the history of the city and country. But what caused these riots? These so-called Gordon riots, like most of the social unrest of the time, was fueled by religious legislation and socioeconomic issues. They were named after Lord George Gordon, who was a British politician for the Wiltshire constituency, sitting in the House of Commons between 1774 and 1780. According to an article by Jerry White, he was widely considered mad, at least unhinged on the matters of religion. He wore his hair long and lank like a Puritan of the previous century. His speeches were wild and unbalanced. In all, he was made a striking martyr-like figure in the Protestant cause. The Gordon riots was an explosive reaction to the introduction of a new piece of legislation, the Catholic Relief Act of 1778, which lifted many of the restrictions on the civil rights of Catholics, who up until this point were actively discriminated against in law, including clauses that would allow the Catholics to join the British Army. For Gordon and his sympathisers, this was a huge threat, fearing that this would open the doors to allowing Catholics to plot treason and carry out treasonous acts from within. The Act had actually been passed the year before and had not been a topic of public hostility until now. However, in 1779, Parliament attempted to extend this law into Scotland, where it was met with vitriol. So severe was the anti-Catholic rioting that broke out in Glasgow and Edinburgh that the Prime Minister did withdraw the Act. Egged on by what he'd seen in Scotland, in March 1780, Gordon told the Commons that he had 160,000 men in Scotland at his command, and if the king did not keep his coronation oath, they were determined to cut off his head. Following this came a period of the Protestant Association handing out advertisements and propaganda, and it was here where the stormy seas became a tsunami. Inspired by this Scottish act of defiance, Gordon pulled together a petition to repeal the Act, claiming to have gathered 120,000 signatures and leading a group of between 40 and 60,000 to the doorstep of the House of Parliament to bring it to the Prime Minister, Lord North, demanding that it be heard by Parliament immediately. But he was denied, and the House of Commons wrote this off as another of Gordon's absurd delusions, dismissing his demands with derision. With people gathering in their thousands, fixing blue cockades to their hats, it brought them to a tumult of chaos, vandalism and destruction. The weather was hot and humid, and this got people really riled up. Eyewitness and poet George Crabbe reflects, "From the fields, contingents marched to London, the largest by way of London Bridge, through the Cornhill and the city, with banner, flags, pennants, and many singing hymns, the petition carried in the front like an offering. Smaller marches made their way over Blackfriars and Westminster bridges. The rioters took their frustrations out on many MPs personally, ransacking their homes. One, Lord Mansfield, had his home attacked and library burned to a significant financial loss. His country estate, Kenwood House, which is on Hampstead Heath, was targeted too, but a good guard was able to divert the rabble by offering free beer at the nearby pub. The Sardinian ambassador had his Roman Catholic chapel broken into and set on fire. When the fire engines arrived, these were attacked until midnight. Other rioters broke into chapels across the city, a Bavarian chapel in Warwick Street and a Portuguese in South Audrey Street, and nearby Catholic schools and homes were ransacked. By the 5th of June, the riots moved across to Wapping, outside the confines of the city, targeting Irish mass houses. Those MPs who had a role in passing the Act and not repealing it were targeted, and by the 6th, a crowd of 500 with drums and flags gathered outside the Archbishop of Canterbury's home. George Crabbe again comments on what seems to be an uprising of particularly the London poor. "In my way, I met a resolute band of vile-looking fellows, ragged, dirty and insolent, armed with clubs, going to join their companions. I since learned that there were 8 to 10 of these bodies in different parts of the city." This class view of the riots holds water. The religious aspect aside, what drove the riots in part was the sheer level of inequality in London. From an economic perspective, wages had not kept up with the cost of living throughout the 1770s, and the poor lived in dire standards. The country was also in an unpopular and expensive war with America, where there was multiple and humiliating defeats. Central to this, and the real point of contention, was the prison system, which was deeply disliked by the poor due to its imprisoning of individuals for debt. The prisons became a target of the city riot by the 6th of June. Jerry White tells us, Men with paving mattocks, sledgehammers and pickaxes, iron crows and bars, chisels and bludgeons, broke down the doors and the window shutters. Prisoners were led away to freedom, those awaiting execution still in their chains. George Crabbe wrote again to a friend, "I must not omit what struck me most, about 10 or 12 of the mob getting to the top door of the debtors' prison, whilst it was burning, to halloo. They appeared to roll in a black smoke mixed with sudden bursts of fire. Rioters targeted many civic buildings, including Newgate Prison, which was where some of those arrested in the activities so far were being held, and freeing 300 prisoners, many of which for good, and were never recaptured." On the 7th of June, Black Wednesday, was when the riots reached its fever pitch. It was known as London's worst crisis in the modern period, second to that of the Blitz. Gangs roamed the streets, demanding money for true religion or the poor mob. Houses were damaged, destroyed and plundered, and attacks on prominent Roman Catholic leaders continued. Southwark was ransacked, including the King's Bench prisons and Southwark's new prison, and the ancient borough Clink was burned and never rebuilt. The military took their revenge, shooting rioters dead on the Blackfriars Bridge. Rioters were killed in Cheapside, Pigsteer and outside of the gates of Bank. In total, 210 rioters were shot in the streets, with 75 dying in hospitals and countless others dying at home or from drinking liquor from ransacked pubs. No mind came from the smallest conception of the horror of the scene, the prisons, the toll gates on Blackfriar Bridge, and the houses in every quarter of the town, the firing of soldiers' muskets, the shouts of rioters, and the cries from the distress and the confusion of people who were everywhere, carrying off beds, furniture, and goods. It's more easy to be imagined than described. To describe the state of the city, let me quote Jerry White again. London resembled a city recovering from the ravages of an invasion and remained under something like a military occupation for much of the summer to come. As the dust settled, we can take a toll of its impact. In short, about 250 people were shot dead, with another 200 wounded. Around 450 of the rioters were arrested. Of those arrested, around 20 and 30 later were tried and executed. Gordon was arrested and charged with high treason, but was later acquitted. The riots damaged Britain's reputation across Europe, where many viewed their constitutional government as a weak form of government, at a time where Britain was very much in need of allies and looking to Catholic Spain for support in America, who withdrew their support after hearing of these riots. At this point, Britain did not have a police force, with this being viewed as foreign and absolutist, but some minds were starting to change. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Gordon riots. If you liked it, give us a like and subscribe for more. I bring out new episodes every Tuesday. Goodbye.